In this video, I'm going to go over 6 snapping strategies succinctly. So let's jump in. Alright, so we're in Unreal, and the first strategy we're going to go over is rotation and offset snapping. So if you create an object like a lamp, which has objects that you want to maybe sub pieces of a chandelier, you can have this object where the pivot points align to the center point, and then you just turn on rotation-based snapping, and I'm just going to duplicate, and now we've got the other lamp pieces that we wanted. So you can use this as a start to building a modular blueprint as well, which I'll do in another video. All right, so let's do a rotational offset. And I've got this UFO here, and I want to have a bunch of spheres go around right inside here. So I brought this in, and you can see the pivot point on this is offset from the sphere, but the pivot point is exactly the center point of the UFO. So all I need is the location of the UFO, so I'm going to copy that, and I'll just paste that into the sphere, and now I can just duplicate those spheres around the UFO. Also, if I want to animate them, I could have them be going around here. You could do this with, having just objects like planets and moons, or, the sun with a whole bunch of a galaxy and objects going around the galaxy. I mean, it's not technically an elliptical orbit, but it'd be close. All right, let's go to the next one, which would be ground snapping. So if you have an object, hopefully you know this one, the end key will take you right to the ground. And if you wanted to, you can also hold down the Alt and that'll snap down to the pivot point. So it'll snap down to the ground. So anything that's under it, it'll snap down to. So like if the UFO was under it, it would just snap to the top of the collision mesh of the UFO. All right, so since I have this object selected, that's perfect, and I've got snapping set to 100, this object is built at 100 by 100. So if you want to do grid-based snapping, then you can just easily, in this case, I can easily grid snap in any direction. So that's useful. Increments of the number that you want to do. Oh, I set this one up so that you can also, it's pretty similar to the offset. You can build objects relative to each other with their pivot points. So in this case, I have a window frame, and the pivot point is inset, and the window itself is set here. And so if you take these two, so if you take the location of this one and you set it to this one, they snap exactly together. So that's kind of another modular way that you could work. All right, so the next one I had was socket snapping. So any object, you can do static meshes as well as skeletal meshes, and I'm just going to show a static mesh. So if you hit Control B, we'll go into the content browser, we'll double click, and let's create a socket. So we'll call this socket A. You need this for the variable, and then you can just put that anywhere you want. And that basically gives you the ability to have an additional snapping point. So let's just put that right kind of in the middle. All right, so we'll save that. And now we can make this movable, and we'll make this movable, and I'll set it so that when we hit the Z key, it snaps, like the UFO snaps to this point here. So I've seen a lot of socket snapping in video games where you have like characters and you want to snap like weapons to their belts or whatever, but I've also used this myself where you snap one object to another object to keep relative. So we'll keep this relative to this. All right, so how do we do that? Let's go into the blueprints, level blueprint. We'll generate variables. There's a spaceship variable, and this panel, we'll make a variable for that, and we need to make a keybind, so we'll hit the Z key because that's easy, and we'll use this, and we'll say attach to actor. Great. And so what is going to be the parent actor? Well, the panel is going to be the parent actor, and the panel is the one that has the socket. And what's the socket name? Oh, we called it socket A. And we'll hit the Z key, and then what are we going to do? Location rule, we will snap to target. So that'll snap it right to the pivot point. You could have this snap right on begin play, or whatever, and you could keep it relative if you wanted as well. So we could hit F7, close that. Okay, so we're in Unreal and we're simulating. I'm going to hit the Z key. Ah, there it goes. It snapped, and now nudge that, and it falls over because it's simulating physics. We've got relative surface snapping is our next strategy. All right. So surface snapping, I've got bound to Alt-Shift-S, and you can see it turns on. I've got grid snapping to Alt-Shift-G. And usually I keep grid snapping on most of the time when I'm working, unless I'm doing like set dressing. So Alt-Shift-S, I'm going to turn off the grid snapping for a second. I just want to show this. To do surface snapping, you need to move the object not from one of these constrained, but from the center here. And then you can see it starts to snap. You can drag it to different surfaces and it'll rotate. There it goes. There it goes. It's nicely snapping. Excellent. Sometimes you'll see some interesting pivots too as well. Okay. So the final one would be vertex snapping. So you just hold down the V key and you can snap it. You can see the vertices show up on objects. So we could snap to the vertex over here. Nice. All right. Well, that's the 6 snapping strategies. And that pretty much does it for this video. Thanks for watching.